This video has been sponsored by NordVPN, an amazing virtual private network service that can unlock all sorts of content with just a simple click. So while I was working on this video, watching a lot of Ghibli films, I discovered that you could watch these films in Australia on Netflix, but on HBO Max in America. But if you download NordVPN and click on Australia, you can easily say goodbye to region locking and hello to your friend named Totoro.
I hate Totoro.
No one asked you. With over 5,200 servers in 59 countries, you're safe to explore all sorts of streaming services from all around the world. And thanks to NordLynx, you won't have to worry about lagging or bandwidth issues. Seriously, I've been using NordVPN for years and I haven't had any issues or complaints at all. If you're interested, just go to nordvpn.com/AnimeAmerica and use the code AnimeAmerica to get a 2-year plan plus 4 additional months with a huge discount. Again, it's one of the best VPN services that I personally use, so just go to nordvpn.com/AnimeAmerica and use the code AnimeAmerica.
You're in Totoro.
I wish. Well, isn't this a random video I decided to do? Studio Ghibli, the famous studio based in Kogane, Tokyo, Japan, mostly run by the animation genius Hayao Miyazaki, and labeled as one of the most creative and often wholesome studios in the world. So, why did I feel the need to rank every single film they've ever made thus far? Well, with their recent film, Earwig and the Witch, many fans were labeling this film as without a doubt the worst Studio Ghibli film of all time. Even though I think the film isn't so bad, it still has to compete with all the other memorable titles such as Princess Mononoke, Spirited Away, and even My Neighbor Totoro. I honestly wanted to see if Earwig truly was the worst film and decided to check out Ghibli's entire library, only to realize there were a lot of Ghibli films I hadn't seen yet. I mean, I watched a good chunk of these films, but wow, they made a lot of films. Look at this, it's a lot. I decided to watch the films I hadn't watched yet, and even rewatch some of the ones I didn't really remember, so I hosted a Ghibli watch party to allow some of you to help me out. I'd like to take this time to thank everyone who watched the movies with me: Vampire Knight, John Games, J-Man, Ace7299, Nintendo Geek 45, Jack of Blades, Yami Fox 9, Sakichu Pikachu, Bram Parks 426, Evan Hero, Aaron Primate, Fern 96, Mega Lego, and Smeko Gek. And I believe there was one other person who joined me on Discord to watch some of the films. How about we invite him to join us on this video?
Howdy Robyn, thanks for inviting me back.
Good to have you back, Strider. Are you ready to rank every Studio Ghibli film?
You betcha, chibi mode away! Let's go for it. Even after I got out of anime in my 20s, I still follow Studio Ghibli films to this day. And over the years, these films have given me some of the most emotionally gripping film experiences of my life. Many moments still echoing with me decades later. But anyway, I'm ready when you are, Robyn, to check these out.
Now before we begin, I'll have to quickly address one exemption I had to make for this video. I made a tweet a while back asking if 3 certain films technically count as Studio Ghibli films. Lupin III Castle Cagliostro is Hayao Miyazaki's very first film to direct, but it's more of a Lupin film that he was assigned to direct instead of a Ghibli film. People were quick to point out, however, that Nausicaa of the Valley of the Wind was made before Studio Ghibli was established. So if I'm going to count Nausicaa, I'm going to have to count Lupin III.
The other exception is the film The Red Turtle. This is more of a collaboration between Studio Ghibli and European studio Wild Bunch, but it was produced by both studios, so we'll technically count this as a Studio Ghibli film.
But as for Mary and the Witch's Flower, this is the one I'm gonna have to draw the line. This film was directed and produced by former Ghibli animators, and it kinda does look like Ghibli's art style here, but this is indeed Studio Ponuk's very first film, and we like to give credit where credit is due. With all of that out of the way, let's get started. Here is Anime America's Studio Ghibli Worst to Best ranking video.
Well, I guess you're gonna have to answer the big old question now. Is Earwig and the Witch the worst Studio Ghibli film ever made?
Well, after watching all of their films, I have to honestly say, no, it's not the worst Ghibli film. And anyone who says otherwise, I'd like to ask you one question. Have you even seen Ocean Waves? I mean, at least Earwig has some memorable moments and a catchy song. Ocean Waves, on the other hand, has to be their most aggravating film I've ever seen.
It's a reminiscent film with our lead Taku Morisaki, remembering his past and how his ordinary days in high school changed when a transfer student named Rikako Muto came to his school. That's all the film is, actually. Just him remembering a city girl moving to a small town and behaving arrogantly because she could. She walked around the school like she was better than everyone, told off another student that she can't date a guy with a Kochi accent, and tries to move back to Tokyo with the money she borrowed from Taku. This was also the money she asked to borrow when they were on a school trip to Hawaii, when she claimed she had lost her wallet. Whether or not she was going to pay him back is unknown, because her father had to be the one to awkwardly pay him back later.
You can kind of understand the girl's obnoxious behavior because her parents are going through a divorce and she's a spoiled city girl moving into a quiet town, but even when her sour behavior gets addressed several times, she doesn't really grow from these encounters. Her only solution is to stand her ground and avoid anyone she doesn't want to talk to. She even had the audacity to smack Taku despite him pointing out that her comment about them sharing a hotel together was ruining his reputation. I mean, he had the room to himself. She runs in crying because daddy doesn't love me, so I'm staying here now. And he offers his bed while he sleeps in the bathtub, like the gentleman that he is. But she wasn't willing to fix his situation and smacks him for being angry at her. You know, I usually don't say this, but she deserved that.
Taku finds Rikako years later at a train station and admits to himself that he was in love with her. Seriously? After the horrible way she treated him and abused him, he's in love with her? What is even the point of this whole film?
I don't know, Strider. I honestly don't know. Okay, I originally had this film in last place, but then I kinda felt sorry for it given the circumstances.
Tales from Earthsea. The original Earthsea books by Ursula Le Guin hold a close place in my heart, as they were the first novels I ever read as a child. And moments of the protagonist Ged's journey still stick with me to this day. Needless to say, Hayao Miyazaki was even more inspired than I was. He really wanted to bring Ursula Le Guin's fantasy to life. Ursula happily approved the film, knowing she was giving her stories to, well, freaking Studio Ghibli. Arguably one of the 3 most talented animation companies of all time. How could they screw this up? However, there were 2 major problems. First of all, the movie was trying to compress not only 4 Earthsea novels into one film, but also cramming in elements from Miyazaki's manga series The Journey of Shuna. Jeebus, to put it in perspective for you, in elementary school, these novels took me 6 to 8 months to read. Yes, I'm a slow reader, but they were freaking long and detailed books. Beautiful, but long.
The second and saddest mistake was giving the directing job over to Miyazaki's own son, Goro Miyazaki. It's a well-known fact that Goro never really wanted to follow in his father's footsteps, and even went to college to study agriculture. So why give him the director's role when he has no prior experience to producing films? I don't even know why he accepted the job to begin with when he has a shaky relationship with his own father. But this was the one film where Miyazaki had to step out of the theater just to smoke a cigarette. Gee, thanks, Dad.
The results led to a messy film with way too many ideas, and no decent structure or flow to connect the audience to the story. In fact, Miyazaki claimed later that he stepped out of the theatre because the film felt longer than it actually was. It was sad to see this film fail, as Goro placed in it a lot of personal touches. There's many elements in the story that related to his shaky relationship between him and his father. You can definitely tell Goro was trying his best, but we just can't ignore how bad the pacing in this film really is.
And to quote the author herself when she watched the film, "It's not my book, it is your movie. It is a good movie." Well, at least she was being nice.
Here we have the first of our technicalities, the red turtle. But why is this so low on the list?
Well, compared to the other films, this feels more like an art house project that you're happy to watch once, but that's really it. If anything, it feels like one of those films you'd see playing in the background when visiting an art museum. Not that there's anything wrong with this concept, but that's not the real reason why it's this low.
While using no dialogue whatsoever, we witness a man getting stranded on a deserted island. He manages to make a raft in order to escape, but every attempt ends in failure because a mysterious red turtle keeps breaking his raft. Well, how rude. The man is so upset at this turtle that when he sees it on the island's shore, he rushes down to— oh jeebus, what is he doing?
Yeah, I actually had to close my eyes during this moment because, he's beating up a turtle. Come on, it's just a turtle. It made me wonder how the movie would play out after this horrific scene, though. Would the guilt sink in if he realized the turtle had a family? Would nature strike him down for attacking this poor creature? No! In fact, something completely bizarre happens, and I, for one, was not expecting it.
Okay, you have my attention. What exactly happened next?
Believe it or not, Strider, the red turtle turns into a woman. And the man falls in love with her, and they make a baby together that can breathe underwater.
Oh, okay. Where is this movie going with this bizarre twist?
Nowhere, honestly. He just makes a family, we watch the baby grow and leave the island, and the man lives the remainder of his days with his turtle waifu until he dies. Well, that was a thing that I watched.
Yeah, that was definitely a thing we watched, and I have to agree with your previous statement. This is the type of film you can only watch once for its artistic value. But that's it. It's still very bold and impressive for a film with no dialogue, though.
Okay, it pains me to put it this low, but I'm gonna have to place The Secret World of Arrietty down here.
Are you sure? I mean, from the surface, it looks quite charming and creative.
It really is charming and creative, but it's also very boring. In this world, there are humans and little humans called borrowers. Arrietty is now old enough to travel with her father in order to borrow from the humans who live in the house they're hiding in, and suddenly meets a sickly boy named Sho. The film carries out exactly how you'd expect it to, with nothing creative, memorable, or interesting happening at all. Just a small girl wanting to befriend a sweet boy, but a selfish nanny wants to capture the borrowers for some reason.
Yeah, it really isn't worthwhile watching this film. It's a real shame though, as we see the potential for so many creative ideas with these tiny characters. We see them hiking across an ordinary kitchen, holding onto sugar cubes that are pretty big in their hands, and small critters that would give them a hard time regarding their size. But that's about it. Other than that, the plot is pretty generic and carries through with nothing else happening. For a Ghibli film, this is pretty uneventful.
Alright, as much as I like this film and consider this the underdog of all Ghibli films, I'm going to have to place Earwig and the Witch right here. But I still like this movie.
Yeah, I went to see this in cinemas, and I was really excited because it was going to be the first 3D Ghibli film. But sadly, I was pretty disappointed. But I had high expectations. This story was written by the same author who made Howl's Moving Castle. Hey Robyn, why do you personally think this film was so hated by Ghibli fans?
It's mostly because of the graphics, since some die-hard fans can't really handle Ghibli going 3D, but that was never an issue for me. I mean, for its first 3D film, I'm impressed to see the Ghibli style replicated this well. But at the same time, the colors aren't as vibrant, which makes some scenes a bit stale. Overall, I love watching this film for at least trying something new, but I just wish the story's pacing was better.
See, I didn't mind the 3D animation style, I thought it was really cool. The problem I had was that the story felt so unstructured and strange to me, and I didn't find the main character, Erica, the orphan girl, that likable. And there were so many unanswered questions about her heritage and who these people were. Anyway, Earwig and the Witch is about an orphan girl named Erica Wig, formerly known as Earwig, living her best days in the orphanage until a mysterious couple decides to adopt her. Her new mother is actually a witch named Baba Yaga, and her new father is a really mysterious person named Mandrake. Earwig tries to adapt to her new life while being in charge, like she did in the orphanage, but it's not easy with a mean-spirited Bella treating her like a slave, giving her endless chores. And she also has to try her best not to disturb Mandrake, because this guy has a fiery temper.
The story is pretty interesting, but it doesn't really flow well. It doesn't help when you have a stubborn character like Earwig causing so much chaos in her new home, but not really growing or changing throughout the movie. She basically has no arc as she tries to make Bella and Mandrake change to meet her demands. Not the most attractive lead for a movie like this.
Despite the story's flaws, and I personally was very bothered by them, there are some genuine moments that are a delight to watch. One of my favorites is where Mandrake opens up to Earwig about his past. He was in a band, also named Earwig. It says a lot about who Mandrake and Bella were, and how it's sad to see them so depressed and miserable and horrible. I don't know if I quite felt sorry for them in these flashbacks, but I did empathize with them. Earwig just isn't likable to me because she uses every chance she gets to manipulate the people around her, and eventually she does get her way. Overall, the story and animation for Earwig and the Witch give people mixed feelings about this, but we'd still recommend it, if only for the fact it's Studio Ghibli in 3D.
Earwig and the Witch was his third film, and it was the first Studio Ghibli 3D film. And a lot of us were wondering what, Hayao Miyazaki's thoughts on the film was. Well, it turns out Daddy is actually proud.
Yay!
Hello there.
And here we have the strangest version of The Little Mermaid, Ponyo! The film starts off cute enough as a little boy named Sosuke finds a weird little fish stuck in a jar. He saves her and decides to name her Ponyo. But her father comes along and takes her back to the ocean. Through sheer determination, Ponyo escapes from her home and transforms herself into a human in order to find her way back to Sosuke.
It seems simple enough, but the story just had to go and complicate itself up. They say that Ponyo messed up the fabrics of reality in order to become human, which ultimately puts the planet in danger.
Please, remove the human in her, or the planet is doomed.
Seriously? And in order to save the world from disaster, Sosuke has to tell Ponyo if he'll return her feelings or not.
Could you love her if she moved between two worlds?
Wait, aren't they just kids? This is really weird.
I don't know, Strider. Seems like it worked out for them since the fandom is convinced this is a prequel to Kiki's Delivery Service.
Oh yeah, actually they do look similar.
As strange and over the top it may be, Ponyo was still a cute little film full of charm and adorable moments. Ow! Okay, we all know Miyazaki loves to push in his old school messages with these films, but the message, new is bad, old is good, felt a bit tiresome when we got up to this movie. From Up on Poppy Hill is the second film directed by Goro Miyazaki, and it's the one that his prideful dad felt the need to step in and help. There were honestly times where the staff members warned Goro when his dad would arrive, which would give him plenty of time to hide or work from home. Miyazaki Sr. really couldn't leave Jr. alone.
Well, I guess that explains the tonal dissonance that slightly affected this film. From Up on Poppy Hill is basically divided into two separate stories. The main plot focuses on a bunch of high school students rallying together to keep the school board from tearing down their beloved clubhouse that was deemed too old to stand, when they honestly wanted a shiny and brand new building to show the world how grand and magnificent they are in time for the 1964 Summer Olympics. This is part of Miyazaki's natural narrative of modern culture pushing aside the charms and simplicity of older generations. Modernizing society can help people, but it can also sterilize hints of culture and an appreciation of history, and I think this movie shows us a balance is needed.
That narrative alone, along with a blossoming romance, is fine for a movie, but then we have plot number 2, and that is, are me and Senpai actually brother and sister?
Wait, what? They're brother and sister?
Yeah, our main couple, Umi and Shun, become much closer the more time they spend together trying to save this old building, but then they have to put aside their feelings because Shun is shown an old photo of Umi's father, but he was told that the same man in the photo was his father as well. This ultimately doesn't add anything to the movie and gets resolved by a soldier who was also in the photo. So, what was the point?
I honestly have no idea. I have no idea where they were going with that.
And now we're in the category I like to call not bad, but it's got stiff competition. Actually, actually didn't know what to expect with a movie like My Neighbors the Yamadas. With its presentation, episodic pacing, and lack of a heavier message compared to later films, this is just a simple film showcasing the life of an average family living in modern-day Japan.
If anything, you could say this is Ghibli's own take on the loving yet chaotic family stories similar to The Simpsons or Married with Kids. You have a prideful yet stressed out father trying to take care of his nurturing yet flighty wife, cranky mother, arrogant teenage son, and innocent daughter. The theme this film is mostly going for is suggesting the attractive ideals of what some consider the perfect family, but showcasing some of the tiresome aspects of reality that no one really warns you about. Should families fight like this? Should a hard-working parent have to deal with such troublesome children? Is my family really going to sit around and watch TV when they could be playing in the snow? Well, they are much less likely to get hypothermia that way. But anyway, the movie answers these questions with a reassuring message at the end.
Overall, My Neighbors the Yamadas is a random Ghibli film, but it's one of the more wholesome ones with a nice message. Life doesn't come with instructions, and you can't have high expectations when life can be pretty random. Just enjoy each day that you have with each other, and just do your best for the ones you care for the most. Also, I chuckled a bit when I watched this clip.
Regret.
I'm probably gonna use that from now on. Regret. So what happens when the audience falls in love with a random character that was barely in the film it premiered in, so Ghibli decided to make a film out of it? You get one of the most random, yet delightfully imaginative films ever made. And no, it's not low on the list because it's bad. Like we said with the Yamadas, there's a lot of stiff competition, and it's hard enough ranking all of these films. You try to do this is hard.
Despite the film's random origins, The Cat Returns is a creatively fun film full of whimsical charm. Haru Yoshioka was just an ordinary student running late for school when she suddenly sees a cat about to get run over by a truck. She was able to rescue the cat, but didn't realize that she rescued cat royalty. The Cat King arrives at Haru's house, in a not-so-subtle fashion, to not only offer Haru plenty of gifts to show his gratitude, but also to offer her hand in marriage to his son, the cat. Not really wanting to marry a cat, she's told by a mysterious voice to seek out the Cat Bureau and find the Baron. This sophisticated gentleman is apparently a cat statue brought to life, and offers his help in protecting Haru from being forced to marry the Cat Prince.
The rest of the film plays out like a simple fantasy adventure, with Haru trying to find her way back home before becoming a cat forever. It's a very creative and fun film full of imaginative ideas, but that's all it has when you compare it to the other upcoming films. It's definitely not a negative point, like I can't stress that enough. It's a real gem in Ghibli's library, and we can't recommend it enough. Alright, I am not putting this film kind of low on the list because I hate it or anything. Grave of the Fireflies is not only Ghibli's darkest film ever made, but it's also an important piece in film history. Most of Ghibli films hides a significant message within its charming execution, but nope, not with this one, and it's very brutal.
Yeah, this film is not an easy one to get through. I mean, we even start the film knowing that our main characters are going to die, and both of them are innocent children. What a cheery story we have here. The film focuses on the tragic life and death of a brother and sister named Saita and Setsuko. They lived in a small village with their mother as their father is fighting in the Navy during World War II. Suddenly, their whole village is attacked by American airplane bombings, killing a high amount of villagers including Saita and Setsuko's mother. Their aunt was at first kind enough to allow them to stay with her, but soon she turns a complete 180 on them, treating these poor victim of war children like they're a burden on her. Naturally, this pushes Saita's patience, as it should. He should stand up for himself. So he decides to take care of his sister alone by moving into an abandoned bunker. Okay, maybe that's not such a good idea. And from that point onward, it's just all downhill. We watch these two struggle to survive during one of the bleakest moments in human history.
This film brilliantly shows Japan's point of view as they were thrown into World War II and were mercilessly bombed by the US forces. It also shows how bitter and harsh people can be when the war is affecting all of them. Seita tries to steal food from a farmer but gets beaten up and dragged to jail. He tries to have the doctor look at his sickly sister only to be told that she needs to eat and gets pushed aside for him to treat the next patient. You feel nothing but dread, frustration, and sorrow when watching this film. Why Why did the ant have to be so mean? Why couldn't the farmer give food to a sickly child? Why did the world just let these two innocent children die? If Seida's pride didn't get in the way, could he have saved himself and his sister? But that's the thing with Grave of the Fireflies. There was no happy ending for most of the victims in World War II. Why make something light and hopeful when there was nothing but death and destruction?
Grave of the Fireflies masterfully captures the harsh reality nowhere outside of Japan was able to witness during this cruel war. I can praise this film for its masterpiece storytelling and for brilliantly portraying one of the darkest moments in human history. But it's a very heavy film, and it may not be quite up your alley. Particularly when you've had a few years of isolation and disease and, you're just kind of done with tragedy for a while. Don't get me wrong, it's an amazing film, but it does take a lot out of people to witness.
For a whimsical film about floating castles, air pirates, and little girls floating down from the sky, I really wasn't expecting a heavy message about mankind constantly taking too much from nature while reaching for more.
Seriously? I thought this was going to be a fun adventure film similar to Atlantis or something. But it carries a deeper message within its story. If anything, Mother's Basement brilliantly points out the subtle storytelling of mankind's drive for power and improvement in just the opening credits alone.
The story is about a girl named Shita falling from the sky and being discovered by a boy named Pazu. As he takes her in and starts to get to know her, he finds himself suddenly being pursued by air pirates and the military because they're after Shita and her mysterious blue gem that can lead them all to the lost city in the sky, Laputa.
With our main villain portraying everything a film warns us about, the overall message of Castle in the Sky is for mankind to know its place within the planet. For the film says if we take too much of our pursuit towards the skies, mankind is doomed to fall back down and be left with nothing. At least till we find, renewable energy sources or nuclear fusion. Even Shita confirms that the people of Laputa left because they ultimately realized mankind belongs on the Earth and not in the sky.
It's a subtle message demonstrated brilliantly by this film. Take only what you need to survive and live your days in peace and harmony, or else lose the very foundation that brought you into existence for no other reason than power. All of that from a cute film with floating islands and air pirates. That's Ghibli for you. Okay, so we've mentioned a lot of gems with pretty big morals and messages, so I'm just gonna place the film with tanuki balls right here.
Oh, did you really have to word it like that, Robyn?
If I didn't, the comment section would. Wait, is Miss YouTube gonna be okay with this? Pompoko should be a silly environmental film like the ones I grew up with in the 90s. It should be a silly story about magical tanukis joining forces to protect their forest from mankind's never-ending need to expand their territories in the never-ending pursuit of modern living. It should have a bunch of silly characters working together, and they defeat the bad guy so they can all live happily ever after within the forest they worked so hard to protect, right? Right?
Well, this film hits a lot harder than many other environmental films because of how the film ends. In one blissful moment, the Tanukis feel like they've won and they can live together in peace amongst nature. But sadly, this was not the case at all. Mankind was able to expand and take down several forests in their push to create more modern neighborhoods and cities. And probably Walmart parking lots. Everyone loves parking lots. Tragically, this pushes the Tanukis to split up and have to fend for themselves. Some were able to blend in with other humans and adapt to modern civilization while working pretty miserable jobs. But other Tanuki stayed as raccoons and were either captured by human traps or killed by cars. Great, now when I look at Roadkill, I wonder if it was a magical creature that just carked it.
Pompoko doesn't hold any punches. If anything, I like to think its mere existence mocks all the other environmental kids films because they didn't sugarcoat their ending. This was a very concerning issue for many civilians, but these concerns didn't stop the government from expanding civilization. Japan got their major cities and polished buildings. Humans can live in cozy societies while indulging in easier lifestyles than ever before. But at what cost? You thought Pixar could easily make you cry with their heartwarming stories? Well, how about Ghibli, giving the world a very wholesome film with big, bald tanukis that makes you laugh then gut punches you with its dark ending?
It's a dark ending to say the least, but it certainly carries its message more effectively than Fern Gully or Once Upon a Forest ever could.
I regretfully almost placed this film a lot lower since I thought the story had a bizarre pacing issue and the romance just felt a little too rushed. But after doing some extensive research about Miyazaki's choices regarding this film's presentation, my eyes were suddenly open. This was more than just a historical biopic that made a few changes here and there. This was Miyazaki's way of reaching out to this man from one artist to another.
In Miyazaki's portrayal of Jiro's life, The Wind Rises tells a whimsical story about a simple man with a big dream. A dream that he's been carrying ever since he was a child, and that dream is to create his own airplane. When he hears that Tokyo University is about to open up a course on aeronautical engineering, he wastes no time and heads there to chase his dream. Even when there's a disastrous earthquake destroying the entire city, Jiro does what he can to pick up the pieces and continue his pursuit in aviation, along with his peers.
He gets hired as chief designer for fighter planes with Mitsubishi, but his very first design fails the demonstration test. Now this is where the film takes an interesting turn. The part of the film where Jiro goes off to a summer resort while meeting his future bride and a new friend doesn't really happen at all. But there's a reason why Miyazaki placed this in the film. The resort acts like a whimsical paradise made for Jiro. He could be with his lovely fiancée and talk more about life and other theories with his new friend. He seems to be enjoying his time here, but he's an artist and wants to return to the factory to make his dream into a reality. He's finally able to come up with the perfect design, and the Mitsubishi A5M prototype is a huge success that led to the creation of the A6M Zero. But that's when everything takes a turn for the worst.
Shortly before returning to work, Jiro notices his new friend is fleeing the hotel before the Japanese secret police could capture him. While he continues to work on his design, his fiancée grows increasingly ill with tuberculosis. And sadly, once his plane turns to a complete success, he feels a gust of wind, suggesting the passing of his beloved wife. Despite the circumstances, was he able to live a successful life with his revolutionary airplane?
Well, how would you feel if your revolutionary masterpiece and dream-fulfilling design was the very tool that was used for kamikaze missions, and you were never told of it?
Oh, wow. Oh, jeez. Oh, poor guy. Ugh.
Miyazaki took Jiro's story personally since his own father ran his own aviation factory, which ultimately had to be used to produce more parts for Jiro's planes. Planes that were designed to carry the pilots to and from a mission, but the Japanese government took his magnificent accomplishment and turned it into a horrific weapon of extreme destruction. In this what-if scenario, Miyazaki gives Horikoshi a wonderful possibility he could have had, but he tragically lost everything. His friend is gone, his beloved wife is gone, and he is the very man who created the kamikaze aircrafts that pushed their country into a war they couldn't win.
Although the summer hotel scene never happened in real life, it is known that Jiro lived with regret knowing that his dream to create airplanes led to an enormous amount of death and destruction. It wasn't really his decision to begin with. He designed the plane, the Navy approved of it, and he discovered after Pearl Harbor happened that his beautiful planes were being used in horrendous ways. That can't be an easy feeling to live with. So Miyazaki ultimately made this film for the world to see this man for who he really was. Jiro Horikoshi was a brilliant artist with a big dream, which makes his story truly heartbreaking.
And under the category of holy crap, this is way too relatable, we have Only Yesterday. This film is recognized by several critics as an enriching experience that really tells an unspoken narrative of growing up for a lot of women suffering from anxiety. So, yeah, basically women like me.
The movie focuses on a young woman named Taiko Okajima taking a bizarre vacation to the countryside where she can help harvesting safflowers. I guess that could be relaxing. Along the way, she talks about her life growing up as an energetic girl, and we witness her childhood in several flashbacks. The first thing you may notice is the different art styles for each timeline. Taiko's childhood looks a lot softer, poppier, and even cartoonish compared to a realistic design in her adult years. This interesting direction surprisingly adds to the film's overall theme.
With every scene of her childhood, we soon discover a tragic aspect of growing up. Taiko was a very hyperactive child full of spunk and curiosity, but with every flashback, we see some part of her family or peers dwindling her spirit down to the anxious adult she's become. She was the youngest of 3 sisters, so she got a lot of hand-me-downs, but when she asked for her own things, it only brings tension when her sisters complained about her spoiled nature, and even embarrassment when her father points out her behavior over dinner. This then leads to a fight with her sister that ultimately pushes her bratty nature out, but then gets smacked down by her father for behaving inappropriately. Jeez, that scene got to me. In another scene, when she asks her father to bring home a pineapple so they can all try it, the family finds themselves very disappointed with its flavor, thus making Taiko self-conscious about her choices in the future. And when she's failing in school, her mother and sister fight about her future, only for the mother to blurt out,
"But Taiko's not a normal kid!"
"Gee, thanks, Mom."
Ultimately, these scenes of her childhood show us how she became the adult that she is. A polite woman doing her best to abide by the rules while not being a burden to others. Still, it's sad to see her become a successful adult with a nice job, only for her mother to complain even more that she needs to settle down and make a family already.
She says 27 is too old to be picky.
That's all Mom ever thinks about.
Seriously, lady? It's your daughter's life. What business is it of yours? Watching this film made me wonder if her mother could ever be happy with her daughter. Taiko was just an awkward yet energetic child who had to mold herself into the adult everyone expected her to be. And it still feels like that's not enough.
The ending is pretty sweet as Taiko follows up her plans to return to her normal life, only for that spark of innocence and wonder to return to her when she decides to finally live the life that she knows will make her happy. Will her family approve of her sudden decision to abandon her life in the city because she finds herself much happier in the country? Honestly, to hell with them. You go, girl. This movie speaks to the heart of several women who grew up trying to appease others and act as they're expected to, only to deal with a bunch of anxiety issues and questioning one's self-worth. To see this energetic and spunky little girl morphed into a docile yet compliant adult woman really speaks volumes to me.
Oh yeah, Lupin III. This is actually one of my favorite movies, ever since I saw it 15 years ago. I love watching this film, not only for its brilliant story and action, but also because Lupin is voiced by Metal Gear Solid himself, David Hayter.
It may seem like a typical story involving a hero trying to save a princess from being forced to marry an evil count who only wants her to find some long-lost treasure, but that typical plot turns into a fun adventure when you have Lupin as the main hero. And look, the whole gang's here too! Jigen, Goemon, Fujiko, and what Lupin story would be complete without Zenigata, my man!
Yeah, it's more of a Lupin film than a Ghibli film. But this was Miyazaki's first directed film, which led him to create Nausicaa and then Studio Ghibli itself. And boy howdy, did he have a running start with this film. Basically, we have Lupin III to thank for Miyazaki having a chance to prove himself as a director. So why do they make it so hard to find the series online? Anyway, even when this was his very first film to direct, Miyazaki gave an unforgettable action-adventure film full of charming moments, memorable characters, and a solidly structured story I've watched over and over again. Not bad for your first movie, buddy.
We are finally down to our top 10, and what a better way to start this segment than with a film so iconic, Ghibli had to place the main character on the logo.
My Neighbor Totoro. Ah yes, who can ever forget this lovable fellow? I mean, we couldn't even if we tried. Seriously, he's everywhere. Plushies, phone cases, Pixar movies. Totoro is everywhere. His look and personality are so memorable that he's practically the leading brand of Ghibli. Well, he may be good merchandise, but is his movie any good? Well, yeah, absolutely.
Two little girls, Satsuki and Mei, move to an old house with their father in order to be closer to the hospital where their mother is recovering from her illness. It starts off with the girls being optimistic while adjusting to their new life, but then Mei wanders into the forest and discovers a forest spirit sleeping in a hidden burrow named Totoro. From there, both of the sisters interact with him and other spirits while their father does his best to care for them and their mother continues her recovery.
In essence, Totoro is similar to Mary Poppins or Nanny McPhee. While their mother is in the hospital, Totoro and the other spirits do their best to watch over the girls to keep their spirits high, while allowing them to witness the magic of nature. But as you'll notice in the credits, once their mother returns home, Totoro and the others are nowhere to be found. It's basically their way of saying, we'll be there for you when you need us most, but when you don't, we'll happily watch you from afar. This film may not be as groundbreaking as other films we've mentioned, but it leaves a memorable impression with its imagination, charm, and whimsy. It's a light-hearted fantasy that'll put a smile on your face while absorbing you into its wonderfully magical world, so we can definitely recommend it.
Well, color me surprised, but this film, when Marnie was there, stole my heart and made me cry.
Huh, it's that good, huh?
Oh god, the ending! One could say the setup of the story is a bit similar to Ocean Waves, where a girl is sent to a quiet town and has a bad attitude, but the one element this movie has that Ocean Waves neglected to include was character growth.
Anastazia is a foster child with severely low self-esteem and asthma. Shortly after suffering from a severe asthma attack, her foster parents send her to spend the summer with their relatives in a quiet town full of clean air. On one of her walks, she notices a nice-looking mansion across the marsh and meets a mysterious girl named Marnie. The two tend to meet up in secret while they blossom a sweet friendship, but there seems to be more to Marnie than meets the eye. And that's all we can really say without spoiling the ending.
Seriously, we can't spoil the ending because the reaction I got was just priceless. It only adds to Anna's personal journey of self-worth and growth. She never knew her parents, lost her grandmother at a young age, and had to deal with relatives who wanted nothing to do with her. It didn't really help when she discovered the government checks her foster parents were receiving because they were taking care of her, so she really feels out of place in this world. As if, well, nobody loved her. She has severe trust and antisocial issues to the point where she can't easily trust the people raising her or other teenagers who just wanted to have a genuine friendship with her. To me, Anna is a very relatable and interesting character whom we got to see grow from her fears and mistakes. This is a charming and wholesome film that is truly underrated.
It truly amazes me to see good writing like this. Someone at Ghibli clearly knew how to write stories revolving around teen adolescence and growth perfectly. And speaking of which,
Hey Strider, you like Country Road?
Country Road? Huh? Do you mean the clothing store? I think they have okay clothes, yeah. Oh, well maybe you mean the John Denver song, Take Me Home Country Roads. I'm just sort of neutral to it.
Alright. We'll get ready to hear it over and over again.
Country roads, I think I'll go. West Virginia.
Maggie, what are you doing here? But in all seriousness, I didn't expect something like Whispers of the Heart to be this good. It's just a simple coming-of-age story centered around our main character, Shizuku. She's 14 years old, trying to figure out what she wants to do with her life, and loves reading books. The film starts off with her checking out books that have all been checked out by the same person, and she starts to fantasize about who that person could be, only to realize it's the boy she really can't stand.
But from here, we watch Shizuki live her life day by day, dealing with typical teenage drama with her friends and other boys, having to deal with her nagging sister expecting her to work hard like she does, and just trying to figure out what she really wants to do with her life. Along the way though, she finds a beautiful antique store full of wonderful pieces of furniture and art, like this statue of a cat called the Baron? Hang on, does that mean...
Yep, this is the film that inspired The Cat Returns. It's here that she gets an enormous amount of inspiration, pushing her to write her own fantasy novel featuring this cat. Even though this is just another coming-of-age flick, it's done extremely well with relatable characters and story. And we also get to see a really wholesome relationship blossom in front of our eyes. A lot of people tend to have mixed feelings about this film, but I genuinely adore it. The Tale of Princess Kaguya. It's just Ghibli's own take of one of their most beloved folk tales, The Tale of the Bamboo Cutter, where an old man finds a small princess hidden inside a bamboo shoot while he was chopping up some bamboo. He and his wife agree to care for her, but notice how she keeps growing at a rapid pace. That and the bamboo cutter keeps finding golden nuggets from every bamboo he cuts down, which ultimately makes him and his wife very rich. Many suitors and even the Emperor of Japan hear about this beautiful maiden and do whatever they can to seek her hand in marriage, but but Kaguya will either turn them away or send them on an impossible request they cannot fulfill. She then has to confess that she is a child of the moon and must return to her people even though she loves her home on Earth a lot.
The film carries on the same story, but subtle changes are inserted to provide Miyazaki's good old narrative that living the simple life in the country is preferable over the stuffy atmosphere of rich cities. In Kaguya's case, she loved living with her parents in the poor countryside and made several friends, but her parents believed she'd be much happier living the good life in the city as a wealthy princess. Well, at least she's more likely to be educated. From then onwards, Kaguya is forced to take etiquette lessons. No, that's a useless kind of education. Anyway, she conforms to horrific beauty standards and is subjected to being treated like a doll rather than a human being. A good example of the movie's narrative is her coming-of-age party, as all the men in the city party and celebrate Kaguya's transition into maturity. She sits in a quiet room, expected to maintain her poise and grace for no man to witness. And it's at this moment we see Kaguya snap and run away from the party. The animation style quickly turns from bright and simplistic to harsh and dark, like the animators are angrily drawing each frame to express Kaguya's frustration. Though honestly, to me, this seems much less like the problem of living in the city and much more like the problem of Japanese culture and how they treat their women. Anyway.
The animation style was an experimental step for Ghibli to take, but at the same time, it only adds to the emotions our characters feel throughout the film. When Kaguya is happy, everything is bright, colorful, and joyous. When she is upset, the animation turns to dark colors and harsher lines, truly giving you a unique look into the story. It's definitely an impressive work of art, accompanied by an emotional story that you have to witness. What a lovely and charming story full of magic, wonder, inspiration, and of course, burnout.
Yeah, Kiki's Delivery Service. It starts out like any other adventure story, where a young witch named Kiki is excited to leave her quiet home and learn how to be a proper witch in a big bustling city. But when she gets to the city, things aren't quite what she expected. The city is full of strict rules that she wasn't aware about, and full of expensive housing that she really didn't take into consideration. But she is fortunate enough to find lodgings with Asono and her husband. But she has to pick up a job as a delivery girl in order to afford rent and food. And from there, we witness this young girl full of joy and optimism devolve into a tired worker developing early signs of depression. Japan, you guys have really got to do something about this.
Kiki's story is unlike most other fantasy stories since it relates to the tired youth who experiences burnout and depression. The very thing that made her happy and optimistic has now become a chore that makes her feel miserable. Oh my god, this is way too relatable.
Yeah, I can definitely get that. I can imagine, even in both our amazing jobs on YouTube, over the years, we've both probably felt a bit of burnout. I know I have. While we can love what we do, sometimes when people are forced to do what they love excessively, or at least feel pressured not to stop, well, it can just turn something we love into something that's tiring. And finding that balance of doing what we love, but also managing balance and moderation can be one of the biggest adult challenges we face.
This may be unexpectedly heavy, but this is a story that has to be told. Kiki was under the impression that she can be a very good witch if she just works very hard. Once she gets out there and gets a job, she slowly grows tired, agitated, anxious, and miserable. This then affects her powers, and she begins to freak out over whether or not she'll be able to fly again. But thank goodness she has Ursula in her life.
Both Kiki and Ursula teach an extremely powerful lesson that's helpful to both kids and adults. No one is perfect, and burnout can happen even in the best of jobs. So do yourself a favor and take time for yourself. Stop trying, take long walks, look at the scenery, smell the flowers, doze off at noon. Don't even think about flying, and then, pretty soon, you'll be flying again. And if that doesn't hit the nail on the head for burnout and every time I've had it over the last 6 years, then well, I don't know what does. This is one of the more powerful quotes to ever come from the film. Children may watch this film and think it's just about a cute witch and her talking cat, but as an adult we can see it and see it's a relatable story that reassures us that we're all just human beings and it's okay to get tired.
Okay, we know this film has been dealt with a bit of criticism here and there regarding its plot, but Strider and I love this film so much.
Ah yeah, Howl's Moving Castle. With its whimsical orchestration and magical story and lovely atmosphere, who can honestly hate this film?
Well, here's the thing. The story starts off with our main character, Sophie, meeting a handsome wizard named Howl. Shortly afterwards, the Witch of the Waste finds Sophie and turns her into an old woman so that Howl won't think she's beautiful again. Sophie makes a decision to travel outside of her town and find the infamous wizard who apparently steals hearts in order to see if he has any way to reverse her spell. But from this point, a whole bunch of things happen that tend to confuse some people. Since she can't tell anyone about the spell, she sneaks into the moving castle and convinces the talking fire Calcifer to hire her as a cleaning lady. There's a war happening between two nations due to a missing prince, but why would the king's head sorceress turn the prince into a scarecrow just to start an unnecessary war? Was it really to use her students as pawns and make Howl obey her? Like, was she just testing her own students or something? Yes, I gave you all this power, now you have to serve me like the bitches that you are.
As confusing as some of the plot elements may seem, the film is mostly following the rule of characters first and plot next. If the characters are good enough, well, most of us can forgive the plot flaws. It allows us to get to know these amazing characters as they take us through their world. Ultimately, you either have to pay attention to the subtle details that make the movie more plausible, or you have to come to your own conclusions on how this story should go. The movie was made more to welcome you to in their world than necessarily tell a fully coherent story. This is their normality, and you just have to follow these characters down these weird and bizarre roads they're thrown towards. And what we're given throughout this story is a magical experience with incredible characters and really atmospheric music.
I know there are better Ghibli films than this, but Howl's Moving Castle is honestly my favorite one. Also, I'm just gonna drop some truth bombs right here, and I'm just gonna say it. Merry-Go-Round of Life is the best music Ghibli has ever made. Fight me!
Yeah, I really like it too. It's certainly the most memorable.
Well, even I didn't expect this, but Porco Rosso is surprisingly an amazing film. It knows how to give you an entertaining experience while also giving you a lot to think about.
The film works as a character analysis focused on the life of World War I fighter ace named Porco Rosso. Why does he look like a pig unlike anyone else? Well, the answer to that is honestly part of the journey. He lives a secluded life as a bounty hunter by day, and meets with his charming friend Gina by night. Naturally, the pirates are getting tired of Porco ruining their missions, and decide to hire an American ace pilot and movie star, Donald Curtis. He faces off against Porco in a duel that ultimately damages his beloved plane. So he sneaks into Italy to try and make a new plane while avoiding the government's military forces. There's so much packed into this film that it's hard not to love everything about it. But I think a lot of people could agree that pretty much every character in this film is amazing.
Seriously, they're all so memorable. The pirates are so funny. Curtis is arrogant but hilarious. Gina is just remarkable and so refined. Fio is best girl, hands down. The Italian family are unforgettable. Ferrari is pretty empathetic despite his circumstances, and Porco is an amazing lead for this movie. It's such an unforgettable adventure film that it also has Ghibli's subtle messaging slipped in as well. Life is full of thrills, spectacles, wonders, family, and love. Too bad the government and war have to try and ruin everyone else's fun. For a movie starring a literal pig-headed pilot, this is one amazing film you won't forget. Carrying on with the theme from most of his films, we know Miyazaki is extremely pro-nature and anti-war. And what better way to prove it than with his second directed film, Nausicaa of the Valley of the Wind.
With the planet still recovering from endless wars and bloodshed, humanity has dwindled down to a few towns scattered across the land due to large creatures and nature being too toxic to live in. Nausicaa lives happily with her people in Valley of the Wind, but their peaceful lifestyle has been halted when the neighboring kingdom of Tolmekia takes the valley hostage when their plane crashes nearby. The leader of Tolmekia wants to use an ancient being to burn down the toxic forest in order for humanity to thrive. But she's using extreme force since she believes it's the only way to defeat these large bugs and put an end to the world's pollution.
And here's where America nearly ruined distribution agreements with Ghibli. It's also the reason why Ghibli sent a sword to Miramax with the engraved message, "No cuts." when they try to cut down and censor another one of their films, but more on that one soon enough. The first translation of this film made the audience believe that the bugs were evil and humans had to find a way to destroy them all. They are evil bugs and humans are the good guys. In actuality, Nausicaa was one of the few people that tried working with nature and with the giant bugs in order to find balance between man and nature, which ultimately makes her clash with the superiors of Tolmekia, as she believes their plan will only cause more damage than good.
The original story is honestly way better than the butchered translation. It was humanity's war on pollution that made nature react in such a way. So it's up to the next generation to learn from the tragic past in order to recover and make a better future for mankind and for nature. You see, even with his early works, Miyazaki knew how to tell an entertaining story and provide a powerful message.
Alright, speaking of that no-cut sword, we have Princess Mononoke! Where do we even begin with this incredible film? A young prince tries to protect his village from a freakish nightmare-fueled hellspawn, thanks Ghibli! But he's suddenly cursed by the possessed boar he just killed. Although he's given super strength, the curse causes him a lot of pain that'll eventually kill him. So he's told to journey westward to find a cure.
And from that point onwards, we're treated to a spectacular story that is really good at making you think about different perspectives. At this point, we're pretty used to Miyazaki's usual message of respecting nature, so we should root for the forest spirits and Princess Mononoke, right? Well, the spirits keep fighting over whether they should try to work with the humans or just kill them all. There's no good or bad guys here. This has nuance. It's like real life. Both sides can be cruel, but both sides have been pushed into the corner, and I actually found myself rooting for the humans more. Lady Eboshi is one of my favorite characters in Miyazaki movies. I never saw Lady Eboshi as a villain. I saw her as a respectable human being that was just trying her best to protect her town, and not showing mercy when she was never shown mercy. Lady Eboshi's town is full of former prostitutes and men stricken to leprosy. The town needs materials from the forest in order to produce iron and provide protection to the town, so I can honestly see her as a caring leader doing everything she can to protect her people. A modern audience is used to a typical good versus evil narrative, but it was remarkable to see a nuanced story like this, even way back when it was produced.
Princess Mononoke is a masterpiece from beginning to finish, with its breathtaking animation, fantastic story, and unbelievably remarkable characters. Some would have argued that this is without a doubt the best Ghibli film ever made. Honestly, we almost agreed with them, as we do believe this is an amazing film. But there is just one more film that we wholeheartedly believe deserves the #1 spot. After all of these years, I am still blown away by Spirited Away. With how animated films have become incredibly dated, marketable, and generic, it baffles my mind to see something this beautiful, this breathtaking, and this imaginative ever come to existence. It's films like this that honestly make me grateful towards Hayao Miyazaki and Studio Ghibli.
I honestly can't agree more. As predictable a choice as this may be, can you really blame us? Spirited Away is just a magical movie. A young girl named Chihiro is moving to a new town with her parents when they suddenly find a mysterious tunnel. The parents decide to explore while Chihiro seems hesitant, and they end up finding a town that seems abandoned. But that doesn't seem to stop Chihiro's parents from eating at a buffet that just conveniently is there. Chihiro continues to explore the area when suddenly...
You shouldn't be here. Get out of here, now!
What?
It's almost night. Leave before it gets dark.
And the next thing we know, we're pulled into a magical world that ingeniously pulls us in seamlessly. Chihiro's parents are turned into pigs, and she begins to turn invisible. But a strange boy named Haku takes her to the bathhouse and advises her to get a job until she can figure out how to leave this place with her parents.
From that point onwards, we watch Chihiro do whatever she can to survive this strange land for the spirits. She befriends many colorful people who at first see her as a nuisance, but then cheer for her along her journey movie, and we just find ourselves sucked in and completely immersed within this amazingly creative world. I don't even think there's a single scene I could ever forget from this film. Chihiro meeting the Boiler Man, meeting the bathhouse keeper Yababa, meeting her sister figure Lin, cleaning the floors with the other girls, meeting No Face, walking through the flower garden, her eating an onigiri while slowly breaking down into tears, the incredible scene where she has to clean that filthy river spirit, meeting Yababa's giant baby and her twin sister Zaniba, that terrifying chase scene with Giga No Face, and seriously, who can honestly forget the train scene?
The train scene alone is an unforgettable cinematic marvel. After all the insanity she had to endure, she just sits on the train next to her companions, and you're treated to a calming experience with very fitting music to accompany this moment. We just drink in the atmosphere, and this is what I love about Japanese animation. We can just have an atmospheric, quiet moment. When I see this scene, I'm often so immersed in the world that I genuinely feel like I'm on this train with her, feeling and understanding everything that's going through her head as we dive deeper into this strange world.
Spirited Away is still, at this current date, the only Studio Ghibli film and the only 2D animated film to ever win an Oscar for Best Animated Film, and by God, it deserves it. What else can we say? Spirited Away is the magnum opus of Hayao Miyazaki's career, and it is, in our opinion, the best Studio Ghibli film ever made. Okay, we're just gonna keep this short because this video is long enough. Anything you like to say, Strider?
Well, personally, I feel Studio Ghibli's years of film speak for themselves. Many anime and cartoons over the years will be picked up in trends and eventually forgotten, but there's a reason Miyazaki's films stick in people's memories for sometimes decades. Because they connect with our emotions and have universal messages that most of humanity can connect with. All you have to do to connect with a Miyazaki film is be human. Pain, kindness, empathizing with our enemies, or even just being able to keep your faith in people, even when the world seems to be falling apart around us. Whether Studio Ghibli films continue into the future or not, they've already given me a lifetime worth of awe, reflection, and emotionally stirring memories, and it's been my privilege to look through them again.
Well said, well said. Now our question to anyone still watching this is, what is your favorite Studio Ghibli film? Leave your answers in the comments down below. I want to give a special thank you again to everyone who watched these films with me on Discord, and a very, very special thank you to my Patreon supporters. YouTube's algorithm hasn't really been that kind to me in a while, and I've had companies from Japan giving me good old-fashioned fun abusing the copyright system. So your contributions go a long way in keeping this channel alive and thriving. And to wrap it up, I just want to say thank you, Strider, for helping me with this very long video.
Hey, anytime, Robyn. And as always, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.
More awesome videos will be on the way, so
Stay tuned to Anime America.